it was like a rebirth. It was like I was being reborn into this kind of epic goddess creature. And there was no turning back.
Is that when you tapped into your erotic creature?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Let's go.
Prepare to be enchanted, or maybe I should say embodied and empowered, because my next guest has made it her life's mission to lead women on a journey to the unseen depths of their power, to awaken each of us to our deepest truths and unleash our most potent potential. Welcome to another episode of This Magic Life. I'm your host, Andrea Koppel. But before I introduce you to my next incredible guest, I want to make sure that if you're watching this right now on YouTube, that you have subscribed to This Magic Life. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I would love it if you could rate and review it. And then if you want a dose of magic every week outside of the podcast, I hope you'll subscribe to the Dose of Magic newsletter. It's absolutely free. All the deets and the links are in the description. So I am absolutely thrilled, first of all, to be here in person, to actually show you that I am not just a disembodied head. And the same with my guest. This is the first in-person interview that I've done since we launched the show. And my guest, Sheila Kelley, is the person that you want to see in her magnificence. She is an extraordinary woman who has redefined what it means to move, to feel, and to embrace the feminine spirit. She is the spellbinding founder of the S Factor. She's also an actress, an author, and a body whisperer who pioneered a revolution 30 years ago as the go-to authority for feminine empowerment, healing, and discovery. Sheila made this discovery, as is so often the case, in a totally serendipitous way, and it ended up changing her life forever. Sheila, welcome to This Magic Life.
Hi, gorgeous.
Hi, gorgeous.
How are you?
I am amazing. I'm so excited.
Me too.
To be here
Me too.
in person.
Me too.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Me too.
I was saying.
I mean, how rare is this?
It is super rare for me.
I'm like pinching. Well, had super rare, period. I mean, COVID really did a number on us. And so being in person with you and your shoes and your legs, I'm in heaven.
Well,
Heaven.
I thank you so much. And I will confess that I went like searching in my closet for the right shoes. Because I'm
them.
like, you guys, when you watch her on YouTube and you see her incredible TED Talk and you see, we're going to get into, I don't want to like reveal too much yet, but Sheila knows how to rock like the 5-inch shoes.
8-inch.
Oh, 8. Okay.
5 is for like, you know.
Yeah. This is training wheels. Training heels.
Oh.
Ooh. Okay.
Training heels.
Stick with me.
I love that. I'm gonna. You make magic happen, girl.
Thank you.
You make magic happen.
Thank you so much.
Because yesterday I was sitting in my house,
Yeah.
waiting to maybe see you in a couple weeks, and you're like, I got a studio.
I know.
And I'm like, this
Yeah.
girl.
And then I hopped on a bus
Yeah.
and I'm here
And
in
I hopped
Soho.
on a train.
And you hopped on a train.
And here we are.
Here we
Wow.
are. So speaking of magic, Sheila,
That's it.
let us flash back
Okay.
to when the magical moment, one of many, but the magical moment that began your journey into female empowerment and embodiment?
Well, you're right. There are so many. But the one that just comes right to the top of my mind is the first time I walked into a strip club. And when I was, 22 years old, 23, I didn't remember how old I was, but I was researching a role for a film called Breaking In. And I didn't know what to expect. I was trembling. I was terrified. I don't even know what I was terrified of. But a
lot of naked bodies,
it wasn't the women I was afraid of.
Really?
No. It was all the masculine energy I was scared of. This is way back in the 80s or 90s, and it was a much, strip clubs today. I think lots of people go, men and women, everybody goes. Mm-hmm. Then women didn't go to strip clubs. I didn't see very many in the many times I went. So I walked in, I was trembling.
Yeah.
But when I settled into my seat and I started watching some of these women moving, some of these dancers, it was, Andrea, it was revelatory. It was some of these women were so embodied, so deeply confident in their overt, beautiful, curvy, feminine energy that it was like a flower. They gave off a scent of power. They just gave off this incredible sense of ownership in their body and their sexuality in a way that I had never witnessed in my life. And I had been a dance major at New York University. I'd never been exposed to anything like it. So
it was erotic dance. That was probably the biggest difference for you.
It was erotic, but it was also, how do I describe this so people can, it was unchoreographed movement that undulated and circled and was rifful of pleasure. It just felt so taboo. Like, who did that? Who does that? Who shows that? It was so vulnerable yet so powerful because these women were just undulating into the natural curving S shape of their bodies. They were like undulating in a way that it wasn't choreographed. It wasn't anything I could learn by learning the steps. It was a feeling of full ownership of sensual embodiment, feminine embodiment. Even before it became erotic, it was feminine with a capital F. Does that, yes. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
I fell so in love with these women that I kept going back to the film I was doing, Wrapped, and I kept going back to strip clubs. Wherever I went, I would go into strip clubs. And I became like the greatest tipper. And then I was the greatest patron because I watched these dancers, these women, like just like in awe at the magnificence of what they were teaching me. And then watching the men watch the women taught me even more deeply how profoundly beautiful we all are. They didn't discern whether we were a larger woman or a smaller woman or an older woman or a younger woman. They were in absolute rapture of every single woman that got on that stage.
See, the cynical side of me, as I'm sitting here listening to you, is like, that's amazing. Were the men looking like that because these women didn't have much clothing on?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not that they didn't have much clothing on. I mean, yeah, they didn't have much clothing on, but it was really mesmerizing movement. It was the movement. Because there were lots of women the dancers, when they weren't dancing, were walking around and selling, drinks or lap dances, but they weren't as mesmerizing as what was happening on stage as these women were undulating their bodies. And they had like little dance outfits on and they would peel off bits and pieces. But of course, the feminine body in all her natural glory, naked, is stunning. We are so beautiful. We are, all of us, drop dead gorgeous. If only we could believe it. If only we could really, truly in our bones know it.
That so resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because you and I were chatting before we started recording, and I was telling you, it really wasn't until I was in my late 50s that I started to feel embodied and started to feel like I was driving my ship versus being pulled or manipulated or just feeling like I was, I don't know, like a mirage. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
I do. How do I say this? I've been doing this for 25, 30 years, and I've been moving my whole life, 40 years, 45 years. I love bodies. I love movement. But we of the feminine have been knocked off our game. And we get knocked off our body, out of our bodies, and out of the game of being fully empowered in our bodies very, very early.
So let's talk about that, because we'll put a little pause on your story.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's unpack a bit.
Okay.
Why it is that so many of us, I put myself in that category, didn't really love our bodies. If anything, it's like a push and pull, feeling very uncomfortable and not wanting to express our sexuality in a way where we feel we own it.
Because you were told, as we all were, that being fully in your body as a female creature was wrong. Don't entice me. Don't wear that. You're asking for it. Don't speak like that. Don't touch that. Don't do that. Constantly hearing the negativity about the female body. Constantly seeing the female body dissected in the media. Constantly seeing the female body objectified in a way that made you wrong because you weren't a size 0. You were actually a size 6. And boy, you probably needed to lose weight, says the billboard and the magazine article. So no matter where we would turn, from the time we've been tiny, we've been told that being fully in your body is wrong. So in order to keep you safe, or in order to control you, I'm going to ask you to step into this box. And this happens when we're tiny. This happens when we're 3, 4, 5 years old. And I call, the very first time negative attention is brought to our bodies, I call it the first offense. The first offense, the first time that somebody says something inappropriate or something derogatory, or blaming or shaming. So you just met my daughter. She was 4 years old and I witnessed her first offense. So she was running around a public pool with a little bikini bottom on with her brother. And the lifeguard went up to her and he said, "I'm sorry, little girl, you have to put your top on. There've been complaints."
How old was she?
4.
4.
Now, I don't know if you know anything about children. I know you do because you have a baby. But an adult man telling a little 4-year-old to put her bikini top on because people have been complaining was mortifying. And it was confusing. And it was devastating. And she sobbed. And she came running to me and put a towel around her shoulders and would not play, would not swim. From that moment forward, she was so confused because no one said anything to her brother. He was in a bathing suit bottom. Nobody told him to put a top on. Nobody told him that there were complaints. So think about how powerful these offenses are, and they're constant. They're just constant. We get them all the time.
And I know you experienced, at least the one that I've heard you talk about.
Yeah.
Whether it was the first offense, it was certainly a significant offense in your life when you were 7.
Yes, I did. I was sunbathing with my best friends, Donald and Brian, and I had my top. We all took our tops off. It was the summer in Philadelphia, and we laid out on the grass and like this, and it was so hot. We were sweating, and I was a tomboy, and their mother threw the front door open and screamed at the top of her lungs, "Sheila Kelley, you ought to be ashamed at yourself. Put your top on and go home." Well, it's exactly the same thing that happened to my daughter. My shoulders, they just grew up into my ears. I tensed. I was so I was mortified. I was shamed. I was devastated.
How do these offenses, when we're little girls, let alone when we're teenagers and then 20-somethings, how do those manifest in our bodies and then in our behavior and in the way that we show up in our life and in our careers?
Amazing question. So how they show up in our lives, let me break that down for you a little bit. How they show up in our body is that when you are told no as a child, children want to be included. They want to be a part of a family. They want to be a part of a community. When they're told no, they try and adjust themselves so that they fit in, so that they're not ostracized or shamed. That's what shame is. Shame is pushing you out of the circle. Shame is pushing you into aloneness, right? So what we try and do is, I did something bad. I better tighten my shoulders. I better hunch over my chest. I better close my nipples. I better tuck my hips. I better not. I got to swallow all of these things I feel, because it happens emotionally too. When we tell children to not be angry and not cry and not feel, we tighten our bodies so that our bodies become almost little corsets. What happens with the fascia and the musculature somatically is that your muscles take on the shape of denial, take on the shape of no, because you start to offend yourself. You start to, before the lifeguard or Mrs. Hughes says something out loud that's going to embarrass you even more, once you start getting these offenses, you're already tightening and holding yourself in these tight postures. Now look at what's happened to my body.
Yes.
My breath is tighter. My shoulders are forward. My breasts are squeezed between my elbows. My upper back is hunched. I see this posture everywhere I go. I see this posture in the subway, in the bus, in the grocery store, and the tucked pelvis. Now I'm tucking my pelvis. So I don't know if you can see, my pelvis is tucked, and I'm collapsing in on myself. Now what's going to happen if I live like this is my body will become shaped in this shape of no, compromise, and my behavior, the way I live, will come from this body, and I will sadly curb my enthusiasm for life.
Oh, that makes me want to cry.
This is how the feminine lives. All of us have been taught to live like this. Instead of like what I'm doing now, what I teach in S Factor is to expand your body, reshape your body, get the shame out of your muscle, get the shame out of your fascia, open the curves, open the lungs, and reach your body to the fullest extent possible. And that is when you truly begin to live in 100% of your potential. We always think that everything I want is out there. Career is out there, a man is out there, a child's out there, money is out there, everything's out there. So I'm going to keep hustling and hustling and hustling. And nobody understands People don't really understand that you need to do you first, and not just cerebrally, not just like going to self-help seminars, but literally going back into your body to deal with all of the shutdown, all of the shame, all of the no's, and rewire your body for yes, for full potential of expression, for full potential of pleasure, for your erotic, for your emotional life. And really just, it's really, to me, it's a heroic action. And it reminds me, there's a quote that I live by, whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, these pages must show. And that is the opening of David Copperfield. And that changed my life profoundly, because nobody's going to come in and reshape your body for you but you.
Well, speaking of changing your life profoundly, if we can now flash back, now that we have some of the context for where the feminine has been, where women have been and young girls, and how we've culturally and in our society forced them inside. Seeing these strippers opened your eyes to movement and the power of sensuality. And where did that take you, Sheila, in your serendipitous career journey?
It took me so many places, Andrea. So many places, girl. Oh my God. Well, I'm an actor. And I thought, oh, wow, this is incredible. I have to learn how to do this movement. So I didn't want to be a professional stripper. I'm way too shy. So I produced a movie. And it took me like 7-8 years to get that movie shot. And the director was Michael Radford, the British director who did Il Postino. He had just come off of being Oscar nominated, and Daryl Hannah's in it with me, and Sandra Oh is in it with me, and Charlotte Ayana, and it's a great, Jennifer Tilly, great cast.
Dancing at the Blue Iguana.
Yeah. I produced that film and I starred in it, and I got to learn the movement. I went to clubs all over Southern California, and I worked with the dancers, and I had one particular stripper mentor. Her name was Devin. And I remember there was, and I talked about this at the biohacking conference, there was a moment, a turning point moment, that everything in my life changed, where I got it so deeply and so profoundly. Because I went and I produced the film and I learned how to do the movement, but still I wasn't really looking or feeling like those dancers had. I was faking it. I was just imitating them. And I was on stage at Cheetah Strip Club on Sunset Boulevard one morning before it opened, and Ba Wada Ba by Kid Rock was playing. And I was holding onto the pole and I was doing my best version of a hip circle. And Devin was all the way across the club and she screamed out, "Stick your hip out." And I was exhausted. I'd been dancing for 2 hours, like since 8 in the morning. I was like, my hip is out as far as it's going to go. Because you know what? I just had given up. I was like, my hips don't move like hers moves. They just don't. I'm more linear. And then she said, "You look like the straight edge of a razor. Stick it out." And she was like a drill sergeant. And I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm exhausted. And I just gave up. I just surrendered. I just let go. And I said, my hip's never going to go out. And I pushed into my hip, let go of all my muscle, stopped trying to push it, stopped trying to be them. And my hip just unlocked so profoundly. You know how when a garden hose is twisted and then it untwists and then you get this surge of energy?
Yes.
It was like that. It was like a surge of energy came from the very bottom of my body and just shot up through the rest of my body, and it just exploded. And it was like an internal brush fire that did not stop. What I had done was I had unlocked, deadened, straightened, linear hips into the natural, beautiful feminine undulation that the hips of a female embodied person naturally do when you're completely relaxed and feeling into your yumminess. And that moment changed my life so profoundly. And then from that moment forward, I just kept unlocking and unkinking and unblocking all of these, my chest, my shoulders, my belly, all of these parts of my body where I had been holding on. It was like a rebirth. It was like I was being reborn into this kind of epic goddess creature. And there was no turning back.
Is that when you tapped into your erotic creature?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I love that you use that phrase. Yes, that is when my erotic energy just erupted in a way that I could no longer mask.
And what does it feel like?
Ah. It's hard. It feels like you have exploded into your absolute fullest potential, and then you feel like a supernova and not a shooting star. Like you feel like you have like you are just a star that's birthing, and you just start emanating light and energy, and you just feel, you just feel your beauty from the very core of your bones all the way out, about 10 feet out from where your body is. It just emanates.
Do you know what this reminds me of, Sheila?
What?
You know, you and I were communicating.
Yeah.
While I was away at a retreat recently.
Yeah.
It was a Tantra retreat.
Yeah.
This reminds me about what Tantra, which is a spiritual as well as a sexual philosophy and approach to life. And it isn't about like orgies. It's about unlocking the energy. We are energetic beings. And the divinity, it's about trying to connect with higher levels of consciousness. Yeah. It almost feels to me like that's what you had tapped into.
Yeah, it feels like, yes, and it was like your soul and your body and your heart merge and erupt out. It's like there's nothing out there that is going to do for me or fill me up as much as my heart, my soul, and my mind and my body just finally connecting on such a profound level. Like I don't move without my soul moving through my body.
Oh,
I don't move without pleasure and sensuality and eroticism. And I own the key that is missing with Tantra. I like Tantra, but what's missing for me with Tantra, and I studied with David Data and Michaela Boehm and love them, but it is that the permission to allow the light and dark, erotic energy, erotic creatures, because your erotic energy has an emotional core. And that is what I finally got that day where I kicked my hip out. I felt fire. I felt erotic fire in my body.
Was it the Kundalini energy that was swirling, or was this?
I would say it was erotic rage.
Ooh.
Erotic fire, like fierce. So what I found over 25 years is women would release their erotic energy is that they would find that their erotic center was one of 10 different emotional iconic energies. And I call them the erotic creatures. So there's 5 light emotional erotic energies and 5 dark. And what I found and what I released and made not bad anymore was what I call the dangerous challenger. So my erotic energy had more fire than I had ever thought before. Like she was voracious. She likes to wrestle. She likes to push against something erotically. She likes to be overcome in love and lust.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love it. So how did you go from unearthing this gorgeous erotic being and saying, I'm going to turn this into a business and I'm going to create the S Factor?
Such a great question too. Look at you. These are great. Well, the film wrapped and I was released. It was like the Kraken. The erotic Kraken was released. I couldn't put her back in the bottle. I didn't want to put her back in the bottle. But no one in the world was doing what I was doing unless I was at a strip club, and I didn't want to be a professional stripper. So I put a pole in my husband's office in Hancock Park in LA. He was doing the West Wing, and my film was coming out, and the press just descended upon us, and local news and newspapers and interviews, and then all of a sudden Oprah called. This is back when Oprah was still doing her show on CBS, and I did the Oprah show, and I did it 3 times, and it just exploded. Pole dance fitness and sensual fitness and feminine fitness, feminine embodiment into the world. So what happened before that, I just started teaching other moms, because I had 2 kids, and the same thing that happened to me happened to them. Their life just erupted. Their erotic energy just began to emanate the way it was supposed to in the first place. They got free.
So were you teaching pole dancing initially?
S Factor has always been S Factor, and it's always been about releasing the erotic creature within, like the feminine. And the pole was just one part of it. And so pole, I love my pole, but I can do this, on a washing machine. I don't need a pole, but I love having my pole, but I can move in this way at the grocery store. But I modulate it and quiet it. I'm a little less overt. But I will go in my studio in Montana and I will just take big, huge movements that are round, curvaceous, upper body circles, lower body circles, sensual movement, and just get this incredible sense of power.
You have a video that I watched that was really beautiful. And you were showing how you moved grief through your body after your sister's passing.
Oh, yes.
And that really hit home with me because 14 years ago, I lost my brother. And I never thought to move my body, to process it. And it was really sensual watching you. But could you explain how that movement helped you to process the grief?
God, I don't believe you saw that video. I think I put it up on Facebook. Yeah. So when people are very fascinated by the pole and erotic and like, oh, you would teach pole dancing, or oh, you initiated pole dancing into the world. But really what it is I freed myself 100%. And I brought all of the parts of me, all of the disparate parts of me together. And that means that I became whole in a way that I'd never been whole before. Meaning that being an erotic creature, being a feminine, fully enlivened feminine, is having access to every single emotion you feel. And then learning how to allow that emotion to move through your body like wind moves through a windsock and out into the world so that you can process. Look, emotion is simply energy. Emotion is energy that needs to have an action. Every emotion needs an action. And when you swallow the action, when you swallow the response, it gets stuck. It's part of what gets stuck in the musculature. It's part of what causes our bodies to shut down and become little cages of tightened muscle. So when you open up and you take this S Factor journey or I don't even know anywhere else to take this journey, but when you free yourself completely, you are able to, with conscious awareness, this is the term I use, this is the tool I use to teach, conscious awareness of an intentional embodiment. Most powerful tool you could use to re-enliven your body. When I lost my sister, I had so much grief. everywhere. I can't even tell you one place. Like I was in so much pain, and I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. It's like it was in my skin. It was in my lungs. It was in my thighs. It was in my lower. It was everywhere. And I did some meditation, and I found a song that came to me, which is Jared James This Time. And I filmed it. And I used the conscious awareness of the intention of allowing the energy of my sister to move through my body and out into the world. And I used my feminine, curvy body, which I believe it is, it's not just organic movement, but it is idiosyncratic indigenous movement that is indigenous to the feminine body. And I used that to move the energy intentionally through me. And it was cathartic.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Could you speak, Sheila, to young women who are around your daughter's age? Some of them may still be in college. Some may have recently graduated, about how they can be embodied and be these beautiful erotic creatures and thrive in the working world, whether it's in an internship or whether it's that first or second job, without being othered.
Girl, this is part of where we are we're in a turning point. We're at an inflection point, as I'm sure you and everybody that's listening to this can feel it. We're in an inflection point of change. And I'm hoping that we cross over the top of the mountain of change. But we need an entire paradigm shift. And that's going to require courage. It's going to require bravery. It's going to require young women to seek out the queens, the matriarchs, the sages, the mystics, the women like us who are leading, who have led through our lives. There are so many extraordinary leaders that are women right now that are leading the charge in so many different facets of life. Because the reason I'm saying this is because a young woman in her 20s and 30s by herself, she's just, I don't even know what to say. She's like a duck.
I was just going to say sitting duck.
She's a sitting duck.
The one
oh my God, that's amazing.
Who has the power to flaunt her sexuality because she is embodied, not because she's asking some man to hit on her.
No, but that's what they think.
That's what they think. And so maybe we should talk to the men in the audience.
100% talk. I need 100%. Listen, as you know, I'm now teaching men. I'm teaching masculine and feminine and how to honor both of the magnificence of each of them. But I would love to just finish one thing about young women. Young women are not safe. They don't feel safe. They feel like they're a target. They feel like they're prey. They feel they're getting it from every angle. They're getting it from men who want to partake in their beauty and their sexuality. They're getting it from people who want them to be mini men. They're getting it from people who don't want them to be as beautiful as they are because they resent them. And there's just no safe place for young women right now. I look at my daughter and I'm just like, oh my God, thank God I armed her with as much knowledge as she has. This is a sense of peace, but she even gets it, right? So young women, there needs to be a culture of the feminine. And that culture of the feminine I'd use this analogy, right? That we live in a masculine culture. I want you to imagine that this culture is like a campfire, like a big roiling campfire. And all of us are in this culture sitting around the campfire in concentric circles. Those of us that are the most successful, the Bill Gates and all these guys, they're the closest to the fire, to the food, to the heat, to the warmth. And then as you get further and further from the center, maybe they're a little bit less successful. But you've got women who can get close to the fire by mini-manning up or by abusing their sexuality to get ahead on the shoulders of a man.
And what does that look like?
It looks like women who use their sexuality as weaponry. It looks like some of the housewives of name whatever city that show is.
Oh, okay. So the reality show.
Yeah, it's the women who use their beauty and their sexuality on a superficial level, but manipulate it with a more masculine energy instead of truly being in the bliss and the pleasure of the feminine and the beauty of the feminine, right? So that's what that looks like. And then you've got at the very outskirts of that fire, you've got a lot of starving women who subsist on the scraps that those in the center of that fire throw backwards. And we fight each other to get those scraps. Give me that, because we're trying to be mini men in a world where we're really feminine. About half an hour away through the dark and scary woods, there is a feminine campfire burning quietly. And there are women around that campfire, but not very many because it's scary leaving the masculine campfire to build the feminine campfire, the feminine culture. Imagine if we could build that feminine campfire to be as big and roiling and powerful as the male. And you've got these two campfires side by side. I was just in Tanzania with the hunter-gatherers of the Hadza. And the women's campfire is separate than the men's, and they're right next to each other, and they're both full, and all the women are here, and all the men are there. And yes, they interact and they connect, but there is very particular details of how they live. And it was so incredible to see this primal, this very primitive culture actually living in this way that was, it was elevating to each of them. You know, the men were being elevated by the women were being elevated by the men, and they each had their own stories and their own cultures. So that's a dream I have, that the paradigm shift will be that the feminine campfire gets stoked. And you wanted to talk about men.
Yes.
And what part they have to play in that.
Yes.
A large part. A very, very large part. We have gotten to such, like almost an impasse in the battle of the sexes in this current climate, where the feminine have been kind of dragged down and our bodies have been policed for many thousands of years. 4,000 years, right? That creates a lot of pissed off women who have been doused, who are living in a box, who are sick of it. They're sick of being in the box. So they start attacking the masculine, and then the masculine get pissed at the women, and the women get pissed at the men. I was watching a podcast the other day, and this man was talking about how he's so sick and tired of like feminists, and feminists are, the bane of my life. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, we're all feminists. We're all humanists. Can't we elevate each other? Can't we elevate each other's best qualities? And I think that the way to do that is it's going to have to start with you. It's going to have to start somewhere. And it has to start with, instead of tearing down your masculine counterpart, lifting him up, elevating him for his gifts, but also requiring that you also be elevated.
The woman,
the feminine, that we're both elevating each other instead of this tearing down, castrating each other, neutering each other, because it just is, we're in an impasse. where everybody's pissed at everybody.
You came on my radar screen because I got to see you in your magnificence speaking before an audience of a couple thousand people. And you had a beautiful exercise in which you brought men on the stage and women. And there was a whole dancing thing that went on ahead of time with the women expressing their sensuality and sexuality. And then you had the men stand there and just hold space for these women in a way that they were seen, but not objectified.
Exactly.
And it was beautiful to watch the women soften in the gaze of the men, and how empowering it was for the man.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
yes,
how uplifting it was for the women.
That's right. You're exactly giving a demonstration of exactly what I've just said, is what I did is I worked with their bodies and their nervous systems and their energy to change their intention through their body. That's conscious awareness of intentional embodiment, right? So I got the men in their testosterone by giving them push-ups. They had to do like 1,000 push-ups. And then I got them doing a competition, more testosterone boost, right? I want to get that masculine energy really turned on, right? And then I wanted to give them the intention of what to do with that energy, because not many people are consciously aware of embodiment and how powerful your energy is. When you give your energy an intention, and their intention was, I want you to tell her that you will kill for her with your eyes, with your breath, with your body, with your shoulders. It was so beautiful.
It was magnificent.
And it wasn't sexual yet, because I didn't have time. But the next thing I would have done is to have brought a couple on stage and show them how to take that energy into an erotic polarity. But what I wanted to set up here is that in this world in which we live with men and women and non-binary, I wanted to show how every single man is magnificent when he lives in the constructive power of his masculine beast. And every single woman, and this goes right back to the beginning, is profoundly beautiful when she lives in the body of her creature, her erotic creature, right? So the feminine is more vulnerable physically. We just are. We don't have the same density of musculature or bone structure. We have a different shape of our skeleton. We're just so very different. And when we see those differences, and instead of tearing them down, elevate them and stand in integrity in your own body with each other. That's what you witnessed. You witnessed a man standing in the integrity of his power with a woman moving in the integrity of her power, and the connection was profound. He was holding her and he was going to protect her, but he was also being given so much life force by her energy. It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was magnificent. And those who study with you get to benefit from this.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of final questions, but before I ask you those questions, because I try to ask every guest, I would love for you to close the loop on your serendipitous journey, Sheila, because you mentioned you studied dance.
Yeah.
You also studied film and acting at NYU. Did you find that you were pulling on the classes that you had studied at NYU.
Oh, wow.
Were you using your
Wow.
education? Because I think it's very common for us to say, well, I didn't stay in the acting field, therefore it was a waste. Did you find that these skills, that the classes you had taken were valuable? And at the same time, who could have ever predicted
I know
that you would be using them in the way that you ended up?
It's so crazy. It's crazy when you put it that way. So there's so many elements to this question. If you don't mind, I'd like to. So I am an actor, and I was really a successful young actress. I was on LA Law, I was on The Sopranos, I was on Lost, I was on Gossip Girl. I've done 25, 30 movies. My star was rising when I did this film and learned this movement. Prior to having done all that acting, I had been a dance major. So I studied deep emotional embodiment through acting, and I studied deep embodiment through dance. But the thing that what I've done is I didn't give up my acting career, but I put my acting career on the side because this movement was so profoundly life enlarging and life enhancing. But I want to tell you why. Okay, I believe young women struggle so much with body issues. And I am not someone that didn't affect. So I had severe body issues. I was bulimic, I was anorexic, and I was a cutter. I can't even tell you how, the reason I'm bringing this up is because when I found this freedom in my body and I fell in love with my body for the very first time, I had to move all of that shit through my body. But what it gave me was so much body integrity, so much body forgiveness, so much sadness that I had done all of these things to my body. And I know right now that cutting and anorexia and bulimia for young women is on the rise. It's epidemic proportions right now. So my message is, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. And I'm so passionate about what I do and the reason I left the acting onto the side and focused on this is because I do not want young women to be stuck in that place of self-abuse. I want you to know that is not natural. You're not going to see a wild lioness cutting her arms or throwing up her food because she thinks she's too fat. You're not going to see the kind of abuses that we put on ourselves in the wild animal kingdom. So I want to start getting people, getting women, getting people, getting girls, young women to know that there is hope, that there is the other side of this journey of body reclamation, because that is what you've got to do. The reason that you are abusing your body or judging your body harshly, even if it's just negative words, the reason that's happening is not natural. It's not because you aren't stunningly beautiful. It's because you have been trained to live in a box of what is appropriate and what is not considered appropriate in the civilization that we live in, and that you can redefine that.
And once you do, you become free.
Yes.
To follow your interests.
Yeah.
Your interests wherever they lead you.
Exactly.
Because you never know. Whether you're a theater major or a history major or a biochem major, where you're going to end up 10 or 20 years down the road.
No, you never know.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is really, really beautiful. And I hope that message really lands in the way that I know that the spirit in which you're sharing it. the two final questions I have, Sheila.
Yeah.
One is, what advice do you have for our audience as to how they can experience more serendipity and more magic in their lives?
Wow. Follow your curiosity. Follow those little breadcrumbs that source is leaving in the woods of your life. Follow them, trust them. Trust them. And that means I went to a strip club because I was researching a different movie. And then I left that strip club and went and shot that movie. But the breadcrumbs kept sticking in my head and my heart of those dancers. And I was like, I got to follow this. So I kept going to strip clubs because there was some breadcrumbs being dropped there for me. And I kept going, what is it? I'm not going to be a stripper. I'm way too shy for that. But there was something, I know, I'm going to write a script. Okay, I kept going to strip clubs. I wrote a script. I got a writer. I got a director. I followed the breadcrumbs of that feeling I'm putting my hands on my heart and in my belly. I followed my body. I followed my body to nirvana.
Amazing. So what do you think has been the secret to the serendipity you've experienced? You mentioned curiosity. You mentioned listening to your body. Do you think that the other word that might fit there is your intuition?
Oh, yes. I think intuition will work, but on top of intuition is allow yourself to disobey. Break some rules. Question where the rules came from. Question who wrote that? Who said that? Was all of those goddesses written by men? The Roman god. What about the Greek goddesses? Are they all written by men? Is this a man's point of view of what a woman is? I question everything through that lens of what's the truth? I'm going to break this rule. I'm going to bring a pole into my house because that's the truth. And so the truth is when the body sings fully.
Just got chills. Sheila, I know you've got another 6-month strip and rise signature S Factor movement journey that is coming up in September.
Yes, I do. I do. And I'm so excited. So if you haven't seen the documentary, if anybody wants to see something that's going to blow their hearts open, it was such a beautiful documentary that profiles my work. It's called Strip Down, Rise Up, and it's on Netflix. And in the documentary, I take a group of women through a 6-month journey of embodying, releasing, freeing, becoming fully expressed. And I now offer that course. I call it Strip and Rise. And it'll start September 7th and it goes through February. And you, my love, I'd love to have you as a guest. And come and take the course.
Love to take it. Love to take it.
Yes.
I want our audience to know that you have offered a discount.
Yep.
To use the code MAGICLIFE, one word, to get an additional $250 off.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I would love to see you all there.
Yes. Yes. Well, we will include the
Beautiful.
link, everything in the description.
Amazing.
Sheila, I just want to say, I knew I had to meet you in person.
Yeah.
I knew that this couldn't be a virtual thing. I want to thank you so much for squeezing this into your vacation here in New York. And I want to wish you and your daughter, your son, your husband, many, many more magnificent, magical moments to come.
Thank you. And I say the same thing right back at you, love. Especially with those shoes. Rocking. Those shoes are rocking, man.
Let's go.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of This Magic Life. Our mission is to inspire you to stop fearing your future and start getting excited about all the serendipitous and magical opportunities that await you. Make sure to subscribe to This Magic Life on YouTube so you don't miss any new episodes. And for on-the-go listening, give us a follow wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. We absolutely love to get feedback from the This Magic Life community, so make sure to drop us a comment on YouTube or a 5-star review on Apple. And you can always find me on LinkedIn at Andrea Koppel, aka the Career Magic Maker. I can't wait to see you soon.